Now, what's the message to a 6 weeks old who's desperate for maternal contact? And this woman who absolutely adored me, who did everything she could to save my life, who absolutely loved me, and she's absolutely hurting me at the same time. And just how confusing that is for the infant. Now, you tell a mother bear to ignore the crying of the infant. You tell a mother cat to ignore the crying of the infant. Every fiber in my mother's being wanted to pick me up and nurture me, but because the doctors had told her not to. And this is how we tell parents now how to parent. We tell them to sleep train their kids by not picking them up. Hunter-gatherer tribes, you know what they do? They never even put their kids down. In the state of nature, creatures don't put their kids down. That doesn't mean you're permissive. The kid wants a cookie before dinner, and you know better. You give him a cookie, he won't have dinner. You're not going to give him the cookie. But why shouldn't he be angry about it? Why should I be threatened by his anger? Why should I call that naughty? Why should I call that the terrible twos? Oh, you're angry, you're really upset, you really wanted that cookie. Yeah, that's okay. I'm so sorry, it's after dinner, in other words, you're not permissive, but you're also not demanding that the child suppress their feelings in order to be in your presence.
And you don't hold the relationship as ransom to them.
That's exactly
That's the dangerous
thing.
thing.
You don't use the relationship against them.
So I went on holiday this year. 1 week I spent with some family in like kind of a weird camp place in Germany, and the next week was in Bordeaux. I'll be honest, 4 days later, I left and flew back to London alone because I couldn't be the holiday dad.
If you could recognize in that experience that there's something that's still missing for you in terms of your self-awareness, then that could be a teaching experience, and I know that holiday boredom that you described. When I go on holiday, it actually takes me a while to relax into it. Now, the problem is when you're with 5 other people or 4 other people, and you also have to be there for them when you can't even be there for yourself, then you have a real dilemma. And you're either pretending to be the holiday dad or you're being miserable. I understand the dilemma, but I'm not sure that you want to stay that way for the rest of your life, because you got these 2 young kids. And what's the message to them? And that is restless around them.
That it's their fault.
Yeah. And Thich Nhat Hanh, the spiritual teacher, the Buddhist teacher, said that the greatest gift a parent can give to their child is his or her own happiness. And when you're restless and unhappy around your kids, as I have been, they get a message that it's about them. So that's something good to recognize, as long as you take it on as a challenge.
When I came upon it is as a therapist working with family after family and observing that here were parents who had completed the checklist. They had financial success. They had emotional longevity in long-term relationships. They had arrived. And yet there was a deep dysfunction or deep disconnection between themselves and their children. So that led me to be curious, well, what is it? If it isn't what we think it is, success, money, marriage, stability, maturity, then what is it? And I began to see that it's this thing that I call consciousness, which is really the parent's inability to realize that there's this thing called conditioning that obscures the ability to see the child for who it is. So because we've been conditioned, we don't even know we're so conditioned. Conditioned by our own childhood, by the unconsciousness of our parents. We're conditioned by culture in terms of norms, what is right. They've not been aware, they've not been attuned, they've not been aligned, they've just been doing what they were told was the right way to live. But what this does, this immediate placement of a way to be, obscures the ability for the child to develop their way, right? They never get to figure out who it is they are. They never hear the soul calling from within. They never hear the beat of their own essence. They just come to be herded into cattle. And this is where there's a disconnect, because the child is like, hey, see me. And all they see reflected back is the parents' ideation of what they should be. And then the abyss between who the child believes they are and who they feel they should be grows wider. So you have, well, you know, in adulthood, you see all grown-up children walking around lost and aimless, finding who it is they are. Why is it that you're doing this show? To help children, grown children, recover what they once had. And that's a tragedy. Right? Because they had it. We all had it once. So what happens? What happens is that the parent, because of their unconsciousness and their being, completely overwhelmed by conditioning, pluck the child's essence out and shove all this unconscious garbage in, which has never been deconstructed. And they tell the child how to be. Then the child has to go through all their life and then one day have an epiphany or be vomiting on a bathroom floor, overdose, that they begin to say, now I need to find who it is I am.
Right.
And that's this endless cycle. We're all on it. We're all on reading my books and watching your shows to recover from the parenting we received.
What is it that makes them cling so hard? And then how do you help them through it?
It's really tricky, from green beans to having sex too young. It's knowing where that line is, but it's the same thing though. It's what's your stance as a parent? Can I shove those green beans down? Can I stop my kid from having sex? Like, what is my jurisdiction?
Right.
What is that sovereign line? It's really tough. And the beauty of life, though, is that there is no line in stone. Most of it is in sand. And it's uncomfortable. Life is this eternal dance between the knowing and the not knowing, between the possessing and complete non-possession, between the doing and the non-doing. Isn't life constantly the art of this? No more do you see it, played out than in the parent-child relationship. The child is asking you, guide me, control me. I don't know how to do it. And you're like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll help you. I'll show you. But then then you suddenly reach a line where the child can't do it and can't do it your way. So now you have to back off. Then you go in and then you have to back off. You have to be there, everything. You have to provide, care for, and, give everything, but you can't really own them. It's this constant dance between stepping into the doing and the ego of it and your role as a parent, to stepping completely out of it, to understanding that your children are here ultimately to be their own sovereign beings. So you can try and pretend and identify with the role, but ultimately they're their own person. So and then you back off. You go close and then you have to back off. And if you don't, and you ramrod into your child because you don't see the line, no parent sees the line. You missed the line. The line was like way back. You should have stopped way back 3 years ago, right? But you keep going. Then the kid will create something to push you away. They'll either slam the door, they'll create the defense, they'll move to China, they'll do something to go, okay, back off now. I need to find who it is I am. Or they will wallow in an addiction because they don't know where to go. Because you don't know your boundary, right? As a parent.
I always say to people, you get the first 3 years right, you can relax. If you don't get the first 3 years right, you'll be practicing remedial parenting for decades.
And what does screwing it up look like? And how would you know?
Well, first of all, you'd know because there I am with my son, and I'm not finding rest in it. So I don't know how to be there with him. I don't know how to be there for him. And I was like that. I was always waiting for my kids to grow older when I could intellectually engage them, and now we'll have something in common. But the sheer act of being, or the sheer state of being, I could never achieve with them. And it's interesting because I look at my brothers. They're so wonderful with little kids. They're so spontaneously there for them. I never knew how to do that because the real relationship doesn't depend on words. It depends on the capacity to be with.
I can sense just that energy from you. I'm just here with you.
Yeah.
And I'm here.
And I welcome your presence.
Right.
And I welcome you to exist in my presence. And I'm overjoyed to have you in my presence.
Right.
That's what the child needs from the parent.
And that's communicated with body language and everything.
And to the energy that you exude.
And they can feel it.
They can actually feel it.
Wow.
They can't name it, but they can feel it.
Okay. And that already starts changing their personality right there.
That shifts their personality.
They always say that mothers form a different bond than fathers. Is that just another way, an anachronism?
Mothers form a different bond, but only because mothers are present with their kids. Whereas the fathers tend to visit the kids. I mean, the father goes to work typically and then visits at home for a couple of hours and then takes off again next morning. Those fathers who stay home with their kids, they learn how to mother their kids. So it's not a gender issue, it's a relational issue. And the mothers allow themselves to be trained by the kids, whereas the fathers tend to impose their own expectations on the kid. This is not universal, I'm talking by and large. So those fathers who have the good fortune, like in the civilized countries where parents are given paternity leave, those fathers learn to relate to their kids in a different way than the average father somewhere else. We can be trained, but we have to be present for the training. In our culture, the children never need to attach. They need to connect with somebody, because without that connection, they don't survive. And in the hunter-gatherer bands where human beings evolved, those attachments were with adults. And not just one adult or two adults, but with a whole set of nurturing adults. Now in our culture, we've deprived the kids of the parental presence for the most part. And the child's brain can't handle an attachment void where there's no attachment figure. And in the absence of the parent or the nurturing adult, the child will fill that void with the peer group. Now kids become far more peer attached than is healthy for them. And now peers become their models and their mentors and their templates for how to be, how to walk, and how to talk. And as that happens, the kids push away from the parents because they're more minded to belong to the peer group, which has different values from the parents. And the kid's brain can't handle that competition. So the brain of the child will actually choose the peer group over the parent group. And where that goes, you can see on Facebook, and you can see it in the teenage gangs, and you can see it in the increasing frustration of parents who've lost the power to parent, because parents think that their power to parent comes from the fact that they have the responsibility and the strength and the wisdom. It doesn't come from that. The power to parent comes from the desire of the child to belong to you. When the child is driven to belong to the peer group, because we've taken him out of his natural context, we lose the power to parent. What do we do then? We ratchet up the pressure. We become more authoritarian. We lose the authority, so we become authoritarian. And the more authoritarian we become, the more pressure we put on them, the more they resist. And now we label them with oppositional defiant disorder, and we call them obstreperous and bad and naughty kids. All they're doing is acting out their attachment dynamics. So if you want to discipline kids, we actually have to make them our disciples. And the disciple is not somebody who's afraid of you. The disciple is somebody who loves you and wants to belong to you and follow you. So discipline is the very opposite of punishment. First of all, you realize that the most important template, in fact, the essential template for the emotional development of the child, as well as for the brain's healthy physiological development, is a nurturing relationship with mutually responsive adults. That is the template for physiological brain development and healthy psychological development. That means that anything that you do that undermines the relationship with the child will actually undermine the child's development, because it makes the child insecure, and kids in state of insecurity are in defensive flight or fight mode, in which mode they don't learn anything. They just are defending. And so that every time I use the relationship against the child, so I have a 2-year-old who's angry, and most psychologists and parenting experts will tell you, time out. In other words, what they're telling you is withdraw the relationship from the child as a way of threatening the child. And that threat will make the child comply with you. Well, the child may temporarily comply with you, but what have you taught her? You've taught her that the relationship is conditional, that they're only acceptable to you if they please you. Furthermore, you've taught them that relationships are unstable and unreliable. And they've learned that you're not available for them when they're most upset. Because why is he acting out? Why is he throwing a tantrum? Because they're frustrated about something, because they're angry about something, because they're unhappy. And you say to them, when you're most unhappy, that's when I'm least available to you. And this is how parents are taught to parent. Furthermore, Parents are taught not to pick up the kids when they're crying. Let them sleep it out, which is utterly noxious.
Yeah.
Because the child who you don't pick up,
Right.
what lesson do they get? Their emotions don't matter. That's the lesson they get.